In the crazy world that is the SEC, everything is on the table. Welcome on into Sunday FUNDAY right here on SEC Unfiltered. He's Dave Shumate. I'm Cole Thompson. No Chris Phillips today. So if you watched a lot of the post-game reaction shows, you get these pretty faces once again. But real quickly, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below because we're talking SEC football every single day. Make sure that also you hit that ring notification. That way you don't miss a single live episode. Sunday FUNDAY reaction. Dave Talk Ball, Monday Morning Power Hour. Regardless of what type of content you enjoy on this channel, when you hit that ring notification, you get told when everything gets dropped. Make sure that you download the podcast version of the show, really wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Follow me at Mr. Cole Thompson, Dave at Mock 10 Sports, Chris at CPhilly19, and check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks. Go to PrizePicks.com and use the promo code SECU at sign up to get a $50 instant play when you set your first $5 lineup. And guys, PrizePicks is completely different than any other betting term that you have. It's a mix of fantasy and betting at the same time. If you believe the over is going to hit for Brady Cook moving forward, go ahead and hammer it. If you believe the under is going to hit moving forward for Trey Wisner, go ahead and hammer it. If you believe that Georgia's defense is going to be pitching shutouts left and right, go ahead and hammer it. But when you do hammer it, make sure you do so at PrizePicks.com. Use that promo code SECU for $50 instant play with your first $5 lineup. Dave, Week 8 is come and gone. Great matchups, great storylines, but I think the biggest one, once again, welcome to the wild, wacky road that is the SEC in 2024, where every single thing is completely on the table, including us having egg on our face and looking completely moronic when we have to talk about the first game that has really been the storyline of the entire week.
No, I mean, 100%. I mean, the big showdown in Austin, Georgia looked like the team had been soaking in all the negative energy all week. I mean, I saw Kirby Smart's son talking to Oscar Delp or something. They took a screenshot or something on his phone about the game day pick 'em across the board. Everybody picking Texas. But again, I say that. I mean, sometimes people are hard on themselves for picking. But what leading up to that game gave you really any confidence Georgia was going to win that game? But you can only go off the information you have in front of you. Texas has been playing the better game again. Georgia had been more challenged for sure heading into that. I think Georgia came in hungry last night. Texas got hit in the mouth. Quinn Ewers looked a little off. I just think it was a perfect recipe for Georgia to go in there and win the football game. And again, if you told me Carson Beck, show me his stat line, no interceptions, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions, really didn't look that great. And you showed me, I was like, well, I mean, there's no way Georgia wins that game if that's his stat line there. But I didn't totally expect to see Georgia go dominate the line of scrimmage against, I still think, a pretty good Texas offensive line. I just think it was one game. Georgia's healthier than they've been on the front all season.
Let's go ahead and talk about that game. Final score set down in Austin, 30-15. Dave, if you were to tell me that this is the version of Georgia we were going to get, I'd believe it. And I don't think anybody out here would really second guess Georgia as a team because it's Georgia. It's still the same standard that we have known for years. It is still the overall organization that has dominated in the SEC. It still is the team that is headlined by a coach that knows how to win football games, knows how to keep his team motivated, and knows how to make sure that there is a certain distinguished tone in practice that truly is the backbone of them moving forward. So nobody should be shocked about the outcome. The problem is that when you look back at the last few weeks, the game against Auburn, the game against Mississippi State, far too many explosive plays defensively, far too many moments where it felt like Georgia could have pulled away, but they weren't able to, far too many dumb play calls, careless penalties. It never felt like Georgia kind of had that momentum. And naturally, Texas at this point, they hadn't really quote unquote played anybody, but in every single game, they looked like the far superior team. They looked like they were delivering the first punch and the second and the third. And by the third quarter, we were watching as programs were kind of calling uncle and saying, we're waving the white flag. Just go ahead and take care of business. Run in the house. Take what you want. We're not going to sit here and complain all that way. But Georgia, to me, again, this is a thing that really has stood out with teams this year. When your back is against the wall, you find out who you are as a program. You find out who you are as an organization. And you find out what's left of the tank. we didn't even see a plus performance from Georgia last night. And yet still, they look like the far superior team. They look like the team that was delivering the first punch. Dave, in a sense, they looked once again like Georgia. That was the most physical performance defensive I have seen in probably the last 2 years underneath Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann. That was the most dialed up, torqued up, overall complete performance I have seen from that unit really since the days of Dan Lanning when he was the defense coordinator. It was just like a brand new element down in Austin. And maybe it's because that they realized, hey, people are talking about Texas as being the next SEC contender. They're talking about Texas as potentially being the next big-time threat in the conference. And they're like, okay, slow your roll.
Cole, do you think that's fair now? Everybody was saying Texas runs the SEC. No.
It's 100% fair. That it still belongs to Georgia. It is.
No, I always thought that, again, I was never one. It was like, Texas is back. I was on the A of the letter Texas. I was on TXA. I'm still waiting for I feel like you got to win some kind of championship in the league first to say you run the conference. I always thought that was a little premature. I don't really know if this game totally is like, I told you, Texas, welcome to the SEC, mother effers. Like, I don't think it's that. I just think today, or last night, I should say, Georgia just – they were hungry, dude. I mean, Kirby Smart used that term a million times. And to be fair, yeah, they definitely were more hungry because Georgia has taken a loss already. Texas hasn't. Probably a little bit more comfortable than they probably should have been. And like you said, I mean, give Glenn Schumann and them a hell of a tip of the cap for the game plan, especially when he had a kid this week. I mean, I saw somebody posted on Twitter in the end zone clip. It was they went from like a three-man front to the snap. They're in cover 0, blitzing 6,
Yeah.
and Quinn Ewers is sitting there. I mean, dude, just dialing up their bag. But again, to be fair, Georgia had to have this game, I think. They had to. You could see they were the more urgent, desperate football team across the board. I just didn't think, because I like Texas's offensive line, I didn't see guys like Williams and Banks getting dominated like they did in this game. That was probably my biggest takeaway from that.
I think the other part that's really important here is that you look at Texas and now you can say there are things that are susceptible that will cost them a win. And the offensive line yesterday was far from exceptional. Now, it wasn't the only fault here. The other fault was you look at Quinn Ewers, you look at Arch Manning, never felt comfortable with their passing attack, never felt like that they were able to move the ball around. Like, to me, that's really where I kind of had the question marks, but it was a full-fledged roster. It was a full-fledged effort by Texas to kind of fumble the bag. It wasn't a full-fledged effort on offense for Georgia. It was a one-man wrecking crew at times, and it was having a guy like Trevor Etienne. Again, when we talked about where this team was going into the offseason and why you brought in the Florida transfer, I said it was going to be for games like this. That was the best running back I have seen come through Athens since DeAndre Swift. That was the most complete running back I have seen come through the building since probably the days of Nick Chubb. That's how talented of a player Trevor Etienne was, and he was splitting reps with Montrell Johnson. Now you see what we were talking about this offseason, why he was so potent, why he was such a unique find, why he was supposed to be the backbone of this team. Because if I'm looking at the way that he played last night, averaging over 4 yards per attempt, also finding his way into the end zone 3 times, that truly was the difference. Because Carson Beck, he had a couple of good throws. I'm not going to take all the pressure away from him. He had 3 interceptions, and 2 of them were god-awful. I mean, the one to Jahdae Barron in the first half was one of the worst picks he's had all year. But still, you were able to capitalize on quick throws to set up the run. The run was your backbone. 3 touchdowns on the day. That's enough for me to feel confident as long as you're not turning the ball over and putting yourself in negative situations because of what you have with Nate Frazier, because of what you have with Trevor Etienne. You have an opportunity to kind of pull away within the fourth quarter.
Yeah, no, and Georgia's players that we've been waiting on for 2 years, I feel like, to make plays. And it's all relative. I mean, you're holding Georgia to their own defensive standard, but Georgia the last 2 years has not been great rushing the passer. Chaz Chambliss, Jalen Walker, guys across Michael Williams, but they all look like they've been healthy. Janelle Aguero, who I've tweeted about, I was on his ass all week. I've been on his ass all year at the nickel spot. Again, I still think there's holes in there, and I still think teams will still try to attack, but give that kid credit. He played a hell of a game last night, was big in stopping that Texas offense, but again, he'll be out for the first half of the Florida game in 2 weeks. I thought he was kind of an under-the-radar guy, and you go back and watch some of the full game highlights and stuff. I hadn't had a chance to go back and watch the full game yet. I only watched Tennessee Bama full game after we got off last night. But Janelle Guerrero just stood. I was like, dude, he's been bad. But I'm like, dude, you look like Minka Fitzpatrick tonight, son.
When you look right now at Georgia, they needed this win because their schedule still the best could still be ahead for them. They still have games against Tennessee. They still have games against Ole Miss. They still have to play against Georgia Tech. They needed this win because of they're already down. They're down one game in conference play. But for me, they needed this win to kind of reestablish who they were in the SEC. Because if everyone's talking about what Ole Miss can be, everyone's talking about what Tennessee can be, everyone's talking about what Alabama's offense can be when it looks poised, everyone's talking about Texas, everyone's talking about where are the faults in this Georgia squad. And it's like, it's still Georgia. It still is Kirby Smart. It still is a defense that is going to be gung-ho when they
It's the best staff in the country.
It still is a complete and total over roster that, as long as they're not making the mistakes, should beat you and should beat you pretty sound. And this is a way to reestablish who you are. Like, it's a welcome to the SEC moment for Texas because of we are Georgia. When Nick Saban decided to go ahead and hightail it on out and go to the broadcast booth, we had been waiting in line forever to take over as the new IT program. We're not going to give away that title quietly. We're going to make you earn it, and there's no shot that you did last night. So I thought –
sorry, keep going.
I was saying, I just thought for that reason, that's where you feel like, yep, this is a team that you don't want to mess with because of right now you see what the version of Georgia is.
Yeah, and again, I still think Georgia's going to get got a little, maybe not lost, but they're going to give up explosive play still. There's still holes in that secondary. They just played phenomenal, rose to the occasion last night. I'm not ready to sit here. I don't think there's a complete team in this league. Some people in the comments may hate that, and I feel like I'm kind of on my own island when I say that. There's not a complete team in the SEC this year. Everyone has chinks in the armor. Hell, I may say the best two teams in the country right now are not even in this conference. But it's a conversation for another day. But it felt like didn't it feel like Georgia was a little bit like Freddy Krueger last night? It's like every week, me and you talked about it yesterday, you're always like, yeah, I mean, everybody's got holes except them. Oh, wait, they lost. Yeah, everybody's got holes except Texas. Yeah, I mean, they're going to beat Georgia by double digits. I'm repeating what I said. And then you like Texas climbing out of their hole, about to wake up from their dream. Freddy Krueger just snatches them back up and said, no, buddy, you're going to join the rest of the league. Like the rest of us, we all got holes and we can all get got on a given day. And Georgia was Freddy Krueger, especially on defense last night. Quinn Ewers would probably even attest to that.
It's literally just like, hey, you know what? No, let's actually show you what SEC football is about. Not Mississippi State, not this team against Oklahoma. And I think that's kind of where you look at it. The fact that you saw such a great physical performance up front by Michael Williams, by Jalen Walker, by CJ Allen, the ability to blitz, the ability to put Quinn Ewers under duress early on, I thought was the big reason why Texas never could get off the mat. Now, they scored. Don't get me wrong. They were able to come out in the second half. They get the big touchdown pass to Isaiah Bond. They capitalize on the Jahdae Barron turnover. They go ahead and get the Jaden Blue touchdown. Two scoring drives by Quinn Ewers. So it's not like it was all bad.
Yeah.
But the problem is that against a team like Georgia, it literally has to be a heavyweight boxing match, a blow for blow, until you literally are in the final bell. And then it's, okay, well, who gets that last punch? And the last punch, it went to Georgia, but it went to Georgia right after yet another scoring drive. And you know what I thought was really interesting, Dave? How aggressive Kirby was in this game. To not really care about anything going on with Texas's problems. He just wanted to make sure that they established who they were. The fourth down call, right after the 2-minute timeout, or right before the 2-minute timeout. They're at Texas's, what was it? A 38-yard line.
Yeah, I must say 40, yeah.
And so you're saying, okay, well, Texas can't move the football at all offensively today. They haven't been able to do a damn thing. Kirby's like, no, I want to end the game here now. Because if they're not going to be able to drive it 80 yards. So I'm going to waste my defense being tired. I'm going to waste them having to go ahead and run the field if they are able to find this one drive. No, let's just end it here and now. And the aggressiveness like that, that's what stands out about Kirby this year. And that's what I think when you get to vintage Georgia, that's what makes it work extremely well. And for Texas now, that might be the way that you kind of have to go back in. You're going to have to get that momentum. You're going to have to play that type of complete game. And if you don't, then unfortunately, you could be susceptible to a loss. With that being said, I'm not going to jump off the bandwagon anytime soon about Texas. The hype train is still real. This is still a Texas team that can go far. This is still a Texas team that can make it to Atlanta for a rematch against Georgia. And if you go to Atlanta, you're in the college football playoffs. So there's two elements here. Texas kind of got their reality check of, hey, you are not a complete team. There are multiple flaws in your overall roster. You have got to figure these things out first if you want to get better at this point. But it's not as if we're sitting here this morning going, Georgia is 7-5. Georgia is an 8-4 team, and they look like the national champions. No, it's a two-time national championship program under a coach that has been kind of dubbed the next Nick Saban, at a program that we know brings in the right players, brings in the right personnel, and has, for my money, the most complete staff in college football.
Yeah, I'm just looking at both these teams' kind of schedules before we move on. I'll be honest with you. Some people may call me crazy here. From a championship perspective, we won't know what Texas has until their last game of the regular season.
Probably.
Texas, at Vanderbilt, Florida at home, at Arkansas and Kentucky. Yeah, they may challenge them. These games may be rough. That's not good for Texas. So from a championship perspective, if you want to go win the national championship, the next time I'll probably watch a game where I feel like I'm going to have a chance to reevaluate you as a true national title contender like you should be judged, it's probably that last game of the regular season at Kyle Field. Because, I mean, you could struggle against those other four teams, but, I mean, just because you beat them, I'm not going to give you a ton of credit off that one. And, again, we knew Texas' schedule going in. For an SEC schedule, it's probably about as beneficial as you could have got in year one. But, yeah, I mean, still feel good. I mean, Texas should, being the key word, win the next four before the showdown at Texas A&M. So all's not lost. Again, I thought they fought back. Credit to the culture. If they get off the field on 3rd and 10 there when they're down 8, you never know how this game kind of shakes out. But they gave it up. Wheels went off after that. But no, I thought it was a good sign of the culture from Texas. Didn't think the defense really played that bad. Some people, you may just look at a box score and it shows they did. But I thought they allowed them to stay in the game.
I mean, you get 3 turnovers, you get 3 interceptions, you get a pick that leads to a touchdown drive. I'm sorry, like that's not a bad performance. What it is unfortunately you're playing against a tyrant defensively that kind of came back to full strength for the first time this year and showed their true colors. Like that's my takeaway. It's, oh, we're a good defense. Yeah, but Kirby's has a great one. That's it. And when you argue that kind of stones, it is what it is. If your offense has no identity, if you can't ever find a way to kind of pick up momentum, this is the result you're going to get. A 15-point loss at home, being the number 1 team in the country, and they're probably going to drop to somewhere, I would say, in the top 6, lowest being 6, probably the highest being 4.
Yeah, I'm with you.
You're not going to be penalized for having this close of a game. You're not. It's ridiculous to people who are like, oh, they're going to drop all the way down to that. No, they're not. They're not dropping that far. Georgia is still Georgia. This is still Texas. Overall, still a great team. Dave, before we move on, let's just do it really, really fast. Quinn Ewers gets benched. Arch Manning comes in. Quinn Ewers comes out at halftime. He gets 2 touchdown drives, but there is going to be a select minority in the crowd that will carry a very loud voice saying, it's time for Arch. It's time for Arch. He's got to be the guy. Are you in that conversation yet? Or is it, no, we need to get something to work. We need to pick up the offensive identity. Quinn is the dude. And Steve Sarkisian said last night after the game, Quinn's still our starter.
Yeah.
But it does feel like there is going to be that moment where you will have the locker room separated at times. And maybe it's a wide receiver that is like DeAndre Moore or a wide receiver like Silas Bolden going, hey, well, my numbers are better with Arch Manning. I want to make it to the NFL. We got to play Arch. And then there are people like Isaiah Bond who will say, well, no, I've caught 4 touchdown passes from number 3. 3's our dude.
Yeah, I think 2 things can be true at once, like most things in life. First, Sark doesn't like to run a quarterback. I think Arch does bring that dynamic Quinn doesn't have from an in-the-pocket mobility and awareness standpoint. But I think Quinn Ewers has played in the big games. He's played well in big games before. He gives you your ultimate ceiling from a championship standpoint. Now, will you win a championship with him? That's a total other conversation. But I think in that quarterback room right now, Quinn Ewers gives you the best chance to go reach your ultimate goals. Could you potentially go win the next 4 with Arch Manning? Yeah, again, I think that Arkansas game could be a little trickier than people think. You should win it, though. But I think overall, championship, SEC championship, making it deep run in the playoffs, I think Quinn Ewers gives you the best chance because he's been there. He's made plays before. And when he's really good, he's as good as anyone from a college perspective.
Let's head on over to good old Rocky Top, where Rocky Top, Tennessee is celebrating for the second time in 3 years because Well, it had nothing to do with offense in this game. In fact, if you were to tell me that, again, final score 24-17 in favor of the Vols at home, that this was going to be a moment that we would talk about the explosivity on offense by Nico Iamaleava and by Jalen Milroe, I would have believed you in the offseason. If you would have told me that Josh Heupel's offense and Kalen DeBoer's offense averaged, and I quote, 7 points in the first half, I would have called you comically, pathetically awful individual. Because if you just don't belong there, see you next Tuesday, you have no idea what you're talking about because of, my God, that type of offense, that was the storyline. I think the bigger storyline here is that, yes, Tennessee found a way to win. Yes, we saw Nico grow up in front of our eyes. You got to give Tim Banks a lot of credit this year. What Tim Banks' defense is doing to keep Tennessee afloat, to keep Tennessee ahead, to keep Tennessee's offense every opportunity, to give them multiple chances to put up scoring drives. That, to me, is defense coordinator worthy of the year mentality. And that's what I think that we saw yesterday. Once again, especially coming out of halftime when it was still, when you thought that maybe Alabama could pull away, never did.
Shoot, I thought they won the game in the first half. The game was long. I mean, if you're Tennessee and you had 3 turnovers and you had 2 missed field goals and you told them, you're only down 7-0, guys, they'd probably be like, how? And I'll take it. Like, but again, yeah, like you said, give Tim Banks them credit. When Alabama forced some turnovers, they held strong. I mean, Alabama was awful on third down.
They were terrible.
3 for 14. I mean, it was just really bad across the board. Jalen Milroe, a little bit of kind of like you watched it and you kind of felt the same way you felt a little bit about Quinn Ewers. It's like, are you healthy, man? Like you just, again, if there's anything if anyone needs a bye week, and again, Alabama's got Missouri this upcoming week. You feel like it's Jalen Milroe. He just kind of looks a little off, doesn't have the explosiveness. But again, he just cannot hit some of these throws. I think there's some plays to be had. You go back and watch it. He just, for 18 targets to Ryan Williams? Dude, he almost had his age in targets. I mean, at some point, he can't just be your only guy. I mean, I know you go to Jeremy Bernard, number 5 at times too, but, man, just force feeding that. Tim Banks, the defensive line's really, it's a championship level defense for Tennessee. And unfortunately, I don't know if the offense is going to carry them to any kind of championship this year. You watch the game, it's kind of ugly across the board. I mean, I don't know. See a guy UT bag dumps. He loves us. And he's even in here a little bit like, I wish Heupel would be a little bit more aggressive. Like, even Tennessee fans, I think, are like smoking on that cigar, but it's like, yeah, we won. I'm glad we beat Bama 2 years in a row. We're not going to sugarcoat it, but we got our own problems offensively as well. But no, defensively, you can't ask for anymore. The secondary's definitely improved. Jermod McCoy, one of the biggest additions to anyone, I think, on the back end of the SEC this year. Like you said, Tim Banks. I thought Keenan Peely being out would be a bigger factor.
I thought that was going to be the difference in this game. Personally.
It wasn't. I picked Tennessee in this one, but it's because I knew Alabama was not disciplined enough from a mentality standpoint to go win an environment like that. I just didn't think they would. Now, I'll say this. I didn't think Jalen Milroe would be as bad as he was.
No, I also didn't think that we would see, when the moment got to that level, big-time plays from Nico Iamaleava. And I think that that's kind of where you go back and say to yourself, number one, he is a redshirt freshman. He is a dude that is still getting used to starting. He is a dude that is still finding his identity. Number two, we are more than just an offense headlined by number 8. We have a good ground game. We have weaponry. We have guys that should be able to break on open and not be dropping passes. And then number 3, when those explosive plays hit, like the big gain, it was like 70 yards to Dante Thornton to set him on up inside the red zone. That's a play to where you're like, yep, Nico can do that. That's why we trust him. The big catch in the back of the end zone to Chris Brazzell. That's a play. Nico can do that. That's why we trust him. So it's little things like that to where you put aside, yes, he is young. Yes, we hyped him up to be the second coming of Peyton Manning, a bigger version of what we have than Hendon Hooker. Because you got to give a lot of credit to Hendon Hooker. I feel like that I'm also in this camp that does not give enough respect to the guy that was here 2 years ago and really set the tone for Josh Heupel's tenure in Knoxville. But still, this is the version that you expected to be a little bit better than Hendon, maybe almost at that same level as Peyton. And he's nowhere near it yet. But then those throws, the maturity in the second half, the ability to make sure that he kept his momentum at an all-time high, that is where you say to yourself, we can trust Dylan Sampson this year. We got to get better on the offensive line. We also have to get better at the play calling and be a little bit more aggressive, but we watch the kid grow up in front of our eyes. That is where I take away.
I had somebody call me in the industry at half, and it was 7-0 Bama. And the game in the second half to me came down to this one question I asked him. What do you feel better about? Because the plays were open in the first half. To be fair to Josh Heupel, the plays were – I mean, it's every game against Alabama. People are streaking wide open. I think Damani Jackson still has his hip pointer. He wasn't running well. He was
not.
Out a couple of times. But here's what I asked him. What's more likely to happen here? Nico keeps missing these wide open deep shots, or Alabama just magically starts covering people within 3 to 5 yards. I'm going to bank on Nico hitting a couple of these, and that's all it took because they were open. Everybody wants to make Alabama's defense was improved this week. I mean, you go back and watch it. I'll say this. The stats in the run game aren't as bad as they show. If you go watch the game, I didn't think Bama was that bad against the run. It wasn't that bad.
But they did allow 2 touchdowns.
Took the same plan Florida had, put Cam Jackson over that nose, over across Cooper Mays, and 2-gapped it there, which Kalen DeBoer, Cam Womack does not want to do. But they did it in this game, and I thought that was a great strategy. But even in the first half, he's missing wide open dudes. So I'm like, dude, there's going to be plays. You're going at some point, it's like a submarine, and it's like,
are you talking about
trap? He just keeps launching.
Are you talking about Nico?
Huh?
You talking about Nico missing open guys?
Oh, in the first half, it was all game. It was all game. All game.
But I'm going to play devil's advocate real fast. He missed some open guys. You also saw a drop by Squirrel White that should have been there. You saw a couple of passes that were dropped by Chris Brazzell. I'm
not arguing it's Nico's fault. I'm saying Tennessee left a lot of meat on the board 100%.
It was a joint.
My point is arguing people saying Alabama's defense played phenomenal. I don't agree with that.
No, not at all.
There's been holes in that back end all year.
No, not at all. They didn't play phenomenal. What the problem is that here was the question that I had going into the second half. Will Alabama be able to get that same turnover rate the way they did in the first half? 3 turnovers in the first half.
2 missed field goals.
Yeah.
That ain't happening again.
That to me is where you feel like, okay, well, we're okay because we have an offense. My entire thought process going into this game and why I picked Alabama to win had nothing to do with Tennessee's defense. I thought this was going to be a low-scoring affair. If you told me that the final score was 17-10, I would have believed it because of both of these defenses, I think, have the ability to show improvements. But more importantly, both of these offenses have shown me reasons for doubt throughout the entire year. But I know what I was going to get in Jalen Milroe. I know what I was going to get in this passing attack. And that it felt like that this is a game where Jalen Milroe wakes up. He has a better overall outing. He feels more complete. He feels like the more dominant player. That, to me, was the big difference in this matchup. And he wasn't. And honestly, Dave, the biggest problem that I have is that this is the most, far and away, disgustingly pathetic version of a penalty-ridden team that I have seen in a hot minute. And that's coaching. That is coaching. Now, don't get me wrong.
Well, I'll say this, too. To be fair to the penalty stuff, Alabama had 17 penalties there 2 years ago. And Saban's been, back-to-back years. I think Alabama's last 2 years have been penalty-ridden teams, too, to be fair.
I'm not blaming Kalen DeBoer. I'm not, because here's the thing.
You said it was coaching. That's why I said that.
No, it's coaching that this is still a problem. But this was a problem last year, too. Keep in mind that this is still the same Alabama team with the flaws that we saw last year. The problem is that we're so short-minded as individuals, and we've only seen the positives, the growth, the development, everything that Nick Saban did, that we're not allowing Kalen DeBoer to have that moment to kind of fix the flaws. But this team is penalty prone. This team shoots itself in the foot. This team is missing elements. I figured that the depth of this offensive line was always going to be a problem for this year, for this specific year. It'll be better. But the problem that we have right now is that people want to see the exact same version of Alabama that was a tyrant dynasty for year in and year out underneath Nick Saban. It's not there yet. And it was never going to be there this year. What?
I don't think it'll ever be to that level. That's unrealistic for anyone to think that.
But it's also
to be fair to Kalen DeBoer, it's like, dude, he's not going to go on a 17-year run that matches what Nick Saban did.
I will say that the version that we saw yesterday take the field at Neyland, that won't be the one that we talk about with Kalen DeBoer's Alabama team over the next 5 years.
But Cole, to your point about penalty, that's why I picked him to lose this guy. I was like, I just don't see them bringing on the road and legitimately their first all right, Camp Randall was a true road game. I'm not going to say that, but also we can all know when the quarterback went out, I mean, that sucked the
Tyler Van Dyke, yeah, game was over.
Yeah, I mean, that game was over. That sucked the energy. You knew Neyland was going to be different. I looked it up. Alabama, I think in the last 2 trips to Knoxville has, 34 penalties in 2 games?
30, I think it's 36
They had
penalties.
17, and what they have 2 years ago, what they had yesterday? 15?
I think they had yesterday they had 15 penalties for 190.
15. Yeah, so 32 penalties in the last 2 years in Knoxville. You aren't going to win football games like that. But again, this game was lost in the first half. It was just lost. I mean, if you were Josh Heupel in Tennessee, you had to go to that locker room and be, guys, we can't, offensively and special teams wise, defense, y'all keep doing you.
Keep doing you.
Yeah, offense, special teams wise, we can't play any worse, guys. We're down 7-0 at home. We're okay. If I'm Alabama, you're kind of in there. Everybody's probably looking around like, guys, we're only up 7-0. You know, the defense is probably sitting over there like, man, we've got 3 turnovers and you guys can't score any points. It's just, it goes back. This Alabama football team does not play complimentary football. You're not going to beat many good football teams if you're not doing that.
The other problem is that yesterday you can't have those type of turnovers from Jalen Milroe. The very last one, and I know that we have put a lot of blame on Kalen DeBoer. We put a lot of blame on this offensive line, the defense being out of sorts, basically not having the depth. I have no idea when you go back and you watch that throw where Jalen Milroe was trying to target. That last interception, that's all on him. And that is supposed to be where you are the mature player. And it felt like that was a mature throw that Nico wasn't going to make. Why are you in your second year as a starter making that type of read?
And then he's missing dudes wide open for touchdowns. And again, like Tim Banks, great play. And again, you're never going to call a defense that stops every route or route concept. It is what it is. That's why affecting the quarterback's key.
Yeah.
But Jalen Milroe, that's a lot of plays on the board that you're kind of like, yeah, dude, you got 2 guys that are just wide open that you just check down and throw it 4 feet over Justice Haynes' head in the flat. If there's anyone who needs a bye week, and that's why I think this week for Alabama is very dangerous. You got Missouri.
Yeah.
I don't know how Alabama covers Luther Burden. I'll say that. I don't know how they cover him. That's going to be a close game. If there's anyone that needs to get into a bye week right now, it is Alabama. For a specific person, it's Jalen Milroe, not only to get his head right, but I think he's banged up a little bit with how much they've ran him early in the year. I think it's starting to catch up with him. He's got some miles on him.
They also need the bye week simply because of they have to readjust before they take on LSU. And it's always going to be a very strenuous game. You and I know this. The way that we've watched this game, especially be going down in Tiger Stadium, it always has like that kind of extra juice element for some reason. Again, it's one of the rivalries that is unwritten, but it is a rivalry. So got to give a lot of credit there. For Tennessee at this point, the best is still ahead of you. You still control your destiny to make it to the college football playoff. You still control your destiny to make it to Atlanta if you want to play the
get out of jail free card sitting with you.
I think that when, again, you saw the glimpses, what I really want to see at this point is just complimentary football and complete football. Because if we get back to what we saw in week 2 against that NC State game, nobody was going to be sitting here and complaining like, okay, well, yeah, Nico had a bad interception. Yeah, Nico, but he also connected for a big time play. Wide receivers weren't dropping balls. Offensive line looked really solid. Defense was capitalizing and creating turnovers. If you get back to that version, again, nobody is really going to be sitting here complaining. You still have games that are going to be more boisterous to you. Kentucky next week. Then you go ahead and you also play against Vanderbilt at the end of the year. You got the Georgia game. You can still bolster up your resume, show where your flaws are, and get back to the version of Tennessee volunteer football that we kind of were promised. But this did rejuvenate, I think, Tennessee. I have them in my top 10 this week. I think they're going to be a team that gets that momentum going. 10-2 is still on the radar. I think 11-1 is still on the radar. They just have to play. I think you can't have a first half that was as bad as that, and you can't have a second half that gave you that much life. Like, you have to find that middle ground for 4 quarters. If you do that, you're in a really good spot.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen how predicting week to week and assuming, we know what assuming does. But I think Tennessee's going to, I mean, I think you probably agree too. Tennessee's going to be a playoff team. They'll quietly sit here probably for the next 3 weeks because they're on a bye. They get Kentucky and they get Mississippi State at home. They probably won't nationally be talked about a ton there because you're not playing your all, first of all. You're not playing a lot of big name teams. I mean, Kentucky's totally reeling now. Mississippi State, they are what they are. Yeah, I mean, you probably won't hear much about Tennessee until that next trip when they go to Athens. Let's be honest, Cole, that's not even a must-win for them. I mean, really, the must-win for them is at Vanderbilt, if you want to be completely honest.
But, Dave, for me, the problem is that because we're not going to talk about them does not mean that they can't take their foot off the gas. That like it can't
No,
be.
I think they're in a good bye week time too.
But it can't be Ole Miss 2.0. Like we're Ole Miss, we out of sight, out of mind, and then we bring them back, and then they have a terrible performance against Kentucky. I don't want to see that when they take on Georgia. Like, okay, well, they were out of sight. We didn't really worry about them. So they still have to be the same Tennessee that we knew for a while. Like for momentum's sake, for persona's sake, they got to do that. For Alabama, they just need to get a win next week against Mizzou and get into that bye. That's it. Just get. And by the way,
you asked Oracle. You keep going. I was pulling this comment up because someone in the comments earlier.
To me, it's like you don't have to worry about. Like I just need to see them get a win. If they can get a win's a win at that point. That's it for Alabama. Does Mizzou have a chance to beat Alabama?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they do. They 100%.
Given day, yeah.
No, they 100% do. All right, let's go ahead and move on to some other games. These were the main two. Let's go to Fayetteville. Run game was potent. LSU played 4 quarters of consistent football, cohesive football, and it wasn't pretty on the stat sheet. Kind of didn't have to be. You get a win. You get a double-digit win. LSU feels like a team that now we can start at least bringing into the conversation about being a college football playoff contender.
Oh, 100%, Cole. I mean, I think outside of the Georgia win, which, I mean, you got to put that at the best win in the week, obviously. You go into the number 1 team's house in the country and dominate to an extent. You got to give the nod that. I think the second best win, I'm sorry, Tennessee fans. I know you got the win over Alabama, your big rival. I thought that was a pretty ugly game across the board, I'll be honest. I'm going to give it to LSU when you pull back layers of context going into this game. That was a perfect situation for Arkansas. I picked Arkansas to win the game. That was a perfect situation for Arkansas coming off a bye week to get a good game plan together for 2 weeks. LSU probably emotionally, physically exhausted after the Ole Miss game 2 weeks ago. Only led when they won in overtime.
They led for 1 second, and they led for 0 seconds technically.
That was it. Brian Kelly and them rallied the troops. Again, like you said, Cole, wasn't a pretty game, but in those situations, you controlled from start to finish. I mean, I really never had any doubt LSU was going to lose that game, if I'm being completely honest with myself and you here. Like, you went controlled in a hostile environment on the road against a team and fan base that dislikes you a lot more than you dislike them. It's going to be a hostile environment. They had this one circled all year as one they could potentially steal. You go in, you play another phenomenal defensive game. You shut Quinn and Jackson and that running game down. I think LSU got the second best win of the weekend. I'm sorry, Tennessee fans. I know Bama, 3rd Saturday in October. But I think when you ultimately bring everything, pull all the layers back from how big a win that was on that schedule, and if you could go do it again next week, I thought it was a very mature win just overall. That's I hate using the word culture, but that's when you know you're running a good organization across the board where you can go after an emotional win and go handle a solid, dangerous Arkansas team at home that had everything leaning in their favor to pull that upset.
I think the part that I'm really coming away impressed with is everyone kind of circled this as, well, you beat Ole Miss. It took you all the way into overtime to get the job done, but you beat Ole Miss. How are you going to let us down this week on the road? They didn't. It was top to bottom, a clean, concise, very mature, very direct, very, I would say, aggressively sound performance by LSU's offense. Defensively, we still know that there are some weak points to them, and there's going to be weak points, but they feel like a really well-coached team to where they're not shooting themselves in the foot. What I can appreciate is that, number one, they took away Taylon Green's best element with his mobility. And the other part that I can really appreciate is that they got a run game going with Caden Durham, 3 touchdowns on the day.
Well, not to interrupt you, but so I don't forget this point. You mentioned Taylon Green. I reached out to, I'm talking to Arkansas, and I just confirmed because I was like,
he wasn't
banged up, dude. And I was like, was he banged up? He's like, dude, no, he wasn't even on the injury report and stat meeting. So, like, I know people are out there like, he looked a little banged up. Someone internally told me, like, dude, he wasn't even discussed on a stat. So I think he had a little bone bruise against Tennessee, but that was not really – it didn't affect him yesterday. So it's not taking away from what LSU did.
Again, but you talk about the run game. You talk about Caden Durham. Now you have that second punch, and you know that you can run the football. And probably the biggest thing, Dave, I've preached this all off season, why I can't quit LSU. It's like a 2 a.m. cigarette when I'm drunk after going out to the bars. I know it's not good for me, but it isn't. The reason I can't quit LSU is because they have an offensive line that can keep Garrett Nussmeier upright. And in the SEC, when you look at all these other offensive lines right now that have a lot of pressures, that have a lot of sack rates, that have a lot of quarterbacks to get eviscerated behind the line of scrimmage, the fact that the last 2 games LSU has not allowed Garrett Nussmeier to touch the turf, and he's only touched the ground twice this entire year in SEC play, to me, that's enough to say you got a shot.
Against South Carolina.
It was against South Carolina and arguably the best young defensive lineman in the league in Dylan Stewart and Kyle Kennard, who was on a new level that day.
Well, shoot, no, that game, Cole, they totally shut Dylan Stewart down. It was Kennard. I think South Carolina pulled Stewart because he couldn't get anything.
I thought he got a sack though in that game.
No, he didn't
so
play.
Kennard got the 2 sacks.
Yeah.
Either way, it's still one of the best defensive lines in the country. And it's like,
no, it is. It's like your point. To your point, I'm only amplifying. It's not like they're playing shoddy offense. I mean, Ole Miss hasn't much improved defensive line.
They led the country in sacks going into that game.
Yeah.
Like that's what we're talking about with that level. It's like, and that's kind of the frustrating part when it's like, if their run blocking could be just as good as their pass blocking. Like, do you remember like last year we were kind of talking about whenever it was, hey, LSU, take away 10 points of offense, give away 10 points on defense. You are going to have a complete team that can win the college football playoff. Like, it's kind of that way when I'm talking about the offense this year. Hey, if your run blocking could be slightly better and your pass pro could be slightly worse, you may have the best offense in the SEC when everything is humming because it feels that way. And that's where I'm at when it comes to LSU. And more importantly, that's what's going to keep LSU afloat. They're a really sound team when it comes to coaching. They're in the right place at the right time defensively every single week. And they're going to get better. That, I think, is the point that people get lost a lot. They're going to get better defensively because they're going to get that momentum. They're going to keep that energy. And now they don't have to worry about Harold Perkins being well, are we going to play him at the star position? Are we going to play him at the linebacker spot? Who do we shift here? Like, everyone has an assignment and everyone understands the assignment. Offensively, they're pretty healthy at wide receiver. You know who are your difference makers, your X factors. You also know that you have a quarterback that when he is slinging around the yard like no one's business, he is very hard to stop. And you have a run game. I thought that was the most mature performance we saw of the weekend by a team that needed to show we are a lot different. And that's going to carry a lot of weight for them moving forward. I am very excited to see what we're going to get next week in College Station. Because I truly think at this point, A&M, if they get that win, they're going to Atlanta, which means they're going to the college football playoff. I already think at this point that will be the only game that LSU loses this year if they lose a game.
Yeah. No, I'd agree. It's a big one. You feel like the winner of the A&M LSU game next week is in the driver's seat to make it to Atlanta for the SEC championship game. I can't say anything further past that because, again, I don't know any seedings in college football playoffs. But like from that perspective, you feel like when you talk schedule too and the way these teams would be playing, you feel pretty good about the winner of that.
If you were to tell me that both of these teams make the college football playoff because of this performance, but one of them is going to Atlanta, I'd say the winner of that game is going to Atlanta. The loser of that game, if it's A&M winning this game, A&M's going to the college football playoff too. Yeah. That will be it for me. Let's talk about Florida and Kentucky. Good God. I mean, I don't know where to begin. This was a game that I had circled as the last hurrah of Billy Napier because if I figured it was going to be close, spoiler alert, I picked Florida to win. But I also said this was going to be one of those games where it feels a little bit like Jimbo Fisher last year after the Mississippi State game. The writing was on the wall. The decision was made. We're going to let you coach this game. Then we're going to fire you on a Sunday. 48-20 is not a fireable offense. It's not. Against a Kentucky team that shut out basically Ole Miss's offense that ranked number 1 at the time. And now you feel like that they have somewhat of an identity. DJ Lagway, no touchdown passes. But Jaden Baugh, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but he had a 5-touchdown performance. $5 footlongs got nothing on Jaden Baugh's performance down in Gainesville last night.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the more shocking, just the way it went down, not necessarily just Florida winning, but like they put up 41 offensive points against a Mark Stoops defense and DJ Lagway's first SEC start. I mean, I don't know if anybody had that on the old bingo card. I highly doubt it. But, I mean, yeah, give Florida credit. Billy's going to be coaching in Jacksonville. Team's playing with as much confidence as they've had all year, really, since the UCF game. I mean, I know they lost at Tennessee. That's a game they probably feel like, yeah, we're not going to just get totally down on ourselves from this perspective. And we easily could have won that game against Tennessee. So for the last 3 weeks, now they're heading into a bye week before Georgia, they're going to be rolling in with some confidence. wouldn't shock me if they're playing with Georgia the way this college football season's going. Because like I said, I think everyone in this league has warts and holes. If Georgia doesn't show up and play well, when you have a couple of defenders and they're thin in that back end, like they're missing the first half, a couple of those secondary guys, Florida could be in this game in the second half at some point. They're playing with a lot of confidence, as you know, Cole. College athletics, college football in general is all about generating momentum, dude. If you're playing with some momentum, you have a shot. DJ Lagway looked really good. Again, I don't think he's going to – I would be really surprised here. Maybe somebody could clip this if I'm wrong, but I don't think he's going to go have the same game against Georgia. But again, you got to be fired up if you are Florida heading into this bye week. You got a real opportunity ahead of yourself to just keep building on that. I know you're 2-1 in the last 3, but it's about as much confidence as Billy's had in his entire tenure, maybe since his first win against Utah in 2022.
I don't think that you want him to have the same type of performance personally. I mean, yeah, you averaged 18 yards per throw, but you were 7 of 14 passing and you had an interception. The thing is that I want to go into this game knowing that there was a game plan built around making DJ comfortable. Because before, you have to realize he was a spot starter. They had drives that were made for him. They had opportunities that would allow him to get onto the field and build that confidence because if he is the future of this team. But he never had the shot of being the guy, being the dude, being QB1. It was always him and Graham Mertz. This was the start. They called a game plan that made him comfortable. They called a game plan that made him reliant. They called a game plan that put him in a very good situation that was always feeling like they weren't shooting themselves in the foot. And so from that standpoint, yes, I do believe that you feel pretty good about where you are with DJ going into the bye week. I don't live in a world where hindsight's 20/20. I don't. I think it's stupid. But at the same time, we're a 2-point conversion attempt away from potentially Florida being 4-1 in their last 3 games. I mean, their last 4 or 5 games. I mean, and the 2 losses come to an A&M team that looks like it could be a college football playoff bound roster and a Miami team that is also looking like a potential college football playoff bound juggernaut. So the losses don't look that bad. The games that you won look pretty good. And also Tennessee at this point, a 3rd loss, you're sitting at 4-3. They could be going to the college football playoff.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's so much frustration when it comes.
It's not that bad.
No, it's not that bad. The problem is that this is where I get frustrated with Billy because of, again, you're still seeing the year 1 routine mistakes that are just awful. They're not good and it's not sustainable. And that's what frustrates me because if you are a good coach and you show that yesterday by nearly hanging 50 on a Kentucky defense that entered the week top 20 in almost every category. So there is life there. Don't kid yourself and say that there isn't. But it's like it's too little, too late for me to already kind of have to not see.
Can they get to 6 in your opinion with that schedule? So
yeah, can they get
at Georgia and Jacksonville, at Texas, LSU at home, Ole Miss at home, and then at Florida State.
Could they get to 6? Yes, but I feel like at this point they needed that win over Tennessee just to guarantee that they got to 6.
It's what I say on the show all the time. It's like what I talk about with Shane Beamer. It's what I talk about with Sam Pittman, and here's Billy too. We talk about in year 3 in today's college football. You know the timeline's pushed up now. You used to get 5 years, now it's 4. Now people are really judging you on year 3. Not stealing a quote from Brian Kelly there, but I'm with you a little bit. In year 3, what does 6-6 really do? I mean, you're going into the same situation again the next year. Like I said with Sam Pittman, if they beating Mississippi State and Louisiana Tech, what's 6-6? If he doesn't retire, they're sitting there talking the same stuff next year. Like, big year. Like 6-6 in year 3 and year 4 does not move the needle for anybody.
Of course it doesn't. But at the same time, let's real quickly, because we still got a couple more games we got to break down and our top 5 teams going into week 9. Kentucky. Everything at this point just kind of feels like a slap in the face. Like, again,
this one feel like cool.
It doesn't, like, that's the thing. The Ole Miss win doesn't feel good anymore. Like, the fact that you didn't go for it on 4th and 8 against Georgia back in week 3, that hurts. The South Carolina game, maybe you feel a little bit better about because of when you play against teams that don't have offenses, South Carolina kind of just eviscerates you. So maybe you feel good, but at the same time, now I'm back on that train of, well, is change eventually going to come to Lexington? Because I don't think that you are going to complain that much if you're Kentucky as a fan, knowing what Kentucky football has been for decades before Mark Stoops arrived. He is who he is as a coach. We know what his identity is. We know who he is as a personnel person. But it does feel like something's got to change at some point. You can't have one great game against a top 10 team in Ole Miss. And then 2 weeks later, you look lost against Vanderbilt. You shoot yourself in the foot.
You had Vanderbilt in a perfect situation.
And also, you're the reason you lost was not because Vanderbilt was the more complete team. It was because you shot yourself in the foot with careless penalties by putting yourself behind the sticks. And more importantly, also not being, when you got too aggressive and the turnover on downs, you didn't capitalize on points. So again, here we are talking about Kentucky where, yeah, they got to win. They get a big time matchup. And now, unfortunately, they're losing to teams that they felt like they probably should have beaten.
I mean, this feels like the basketball situation with Cal. This thing's just kind of ran its course. It's never that bad. Again, give Mark Stoops credit. He's raised the floor of Kentucky football where people are pissed off with 6 or 7 wins kind of at this point. But at the same time, you going publicly and bashing NIL when you can't consistently beat the teams that are on your level in South Carolina and Vanderbilt, that's going to fall on deaf ears a little bit to the fan base. This just literally screams the same situation with John Calipari they had in basketball. It's like, yeah, you're going to go get a big win. You can beat Alabama by 30 at home. Yeah, but then you're going to go drop a game to South Carolina or something. And it's like, dude, what are we doing? We're going 1 step forward, 2 steps back. They don't have the money, I don't think, to fire him right now. I don't think they will do it this year.
I don't think they're firing him.
This just feels like at some point he's either going to go leave for another job. It just feels like an inevitable situation until the kids graduate high school and they move on to college and it'll be easy to get out. I think it's just there's a lot of sour apples here.
Kirk Ferentz's status in Iowa is going to determine, I think, how much.
I think even that job for sure, but I even think he'd be open to some other jobs. I think it's ran its course at this point. Again, not good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, anywhere. It's like a coach used to tell me, you've been anywhere for 10 plus years. It's time for a change.
Let's go down to Starkville. Texas A&M 34, Mississippi State 24. Exercising the demons for the Aggies. This has been a trap game of all trap game for years. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't pretty. There was certainly a ton of question marks that still reside around Connor Wigman. But here's the deal. Mississippi State has been playing its best brand of football over the last 2 games in Texas and against Georgia. You got to win. You get a win that now gets you to bowl eligibility underneath Mike Elko. Your defense still is playing really fundamentally sound. They feel like that they're a team that does have a good identity. They know what the strengths and weaknesses are, and you're setting yourself up for what could be a matchup of all matchups next week in Kyle Field against a team in LSU that also has yet to lose a game in conference play.
Yeah, it was your typical look-ahead game, cut off a bye week.
Sure.
I sat there for a couple of weeks feeling good about that Missouri win. That line was a little too rich. The 19 going into it. I saw Stanford Steve on game day. That was one of his locks. He took Mississippi State plus 19. I was like, I respect that pick. That's a good pick there because A&M totally. Again, I mean, no one on that roster, on A&M's roster, had a winning record against Mississippi State. Jimbo Fisher never beat both Mississippi schools in the same year. I just think Mississippi State improving week to week. I appreciate their game plan. They're playing a little chess, not checkers. They're not winning games, folks, but also they're not going into it like, we're just going to go bombs over Baghdad, guys, and just see what we can go do. It's like, no, they're trying to play complimentary football because they know they're going to get blown out by teams against Georgia, Texas, and potentially A&M. They don't go in with a better plan than that. Give Jeff Levy and them credit. They've been doing that those last couple of games against Georgia, Texas, and now A&M. I mean, if you're A&M here, I think it's a game. Look, we didn't play great. We know we didn't. You just go flush it. We got a big win at home this week. Mississippi State's not a very good football team, but you know what? We're not going to take a road win in this conference for granted. I think you just flush it. It's not nothing you take too much from it in this one.
Defensively, in the front 7, they had a good game. 11 tackles for losses, 3 sacks on the day. I can appreciate that. I think that, once again, we're watching this defense underneath Mike Elko hit its full peak, which is coming at the right time because if you have matchups where it is potentially a trap on the road against South Carolina, you got the game next week against LSU, you got to go down to Auburn to take on the Tigers, you got to go play against Texas late in the year. The defense coming along the way that it has is definitely, I think, the sight in the right direction. Connor Wigman, I'm not going to put too much pressure on you. 1 touchdown pass, 2 interceptions. Your ground game, you still were able to run it with Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels. You were able to get you got a field goal from Randy Bond. And you get a win to exercise the demons out in Starkville. Those cowbells were ringing, but you are ringing your way to now bowl eligibility heading into week 9. Let's go over to Como. Let's talk real fast about what happened between Brady Cook's Tigers and Peyton Thorne's Tigers. For starters, I don't want to hear anybody complain about Brady cooking this game. Guy went to the hospital, got an MRI, came back in, and won a football game. If that is not the epitome of I love this team and would die for anybody on that field, there is no epitome other than that. That is the heart of a Tiger. That is the heart of an MIZ grad. That is the belief of a kid that has only wanted to don the black and gold, and he delivered, came back in, big time throw to Mookie Cooper, big time throw on the fourth down to Luther Burden. They get the touchdown to Jamal Jones. Overall, really good performance. Jamal Roberts. Overall, again, this is what you want to see. You were down. You were almost out of the count. And here we are now talking about Mizzou sitting at 6-1, and they may have a game ahead where they feel very confident playing against Alabama.
No, it's a game Missouri had to have to stay in the playoff race, and they had almost like a Disney Channel movie. I mean, the way like your quarterback goes out, second series, I do believe, with his ankle injury, and then he goes to the hospital and he comes back. It's like somebody he gets back out from the ambulance, and someone's got his helmet waiting on him. He just runs out there like Adam Sandler in the longest.
I was praying that Farote Field was gonna go cook.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like a Disney movie.
literally a Disney Channel original movie with a DCOM was
back in the early 2000s. No,
like
for
you
sure.
remember that movie that came out with a Clemson kid? Like that's gonna be Brady Cook on Disney Plus soon.
No,
like just that kid.
No, I mean, give them credit. Like you said, their defense kept him in the game. Yeah, I mean, I think you had to have this game. Again, this would have been a bad loss coming off losing 2 out of 3 outside of the UMass game, but then you losing the A&M game. Missouri gets it done at home in comeback fashion. That was Auburn's only second program loss ever when leading by double digits entering the fourth quarter there. Yeah. So Missouri found a way, somehow, some way. Luther Burden didn't play great. Granted, didn't have his quarterback most of the game. They're playing Drew Pine. He kept them steady a little bit, didn't lose them the game. But Brady Cook, like you said, Cole, in the fourth quarter, came out, delivered. Missouri made every play in the fourth quarter when they had to. Auburn could not make plays. I thought offensive play calling was an issue again. It just feels like Auburn just continually find ways to lose games in the fourth.
It's not even find ways to lose games. It's finding ways to just be completely errantly pathetic on offense. Like, I did not understand the play calling at all in the first half by Hugh Freeze.
Well, dude, I thought the game was over when you get the ball in the 40. What were they up, Cole? 7?
7.
Yeah, they punt it. You get great field position up 40. You go get even a field goal, you probably win the game there. And it's like you just go punt it right back to them, man. It's just I don't know. The thing that kills me, they don't feed Jarquez Hunter enough in this. And I think we're more under the radar players in the league. He just doesn't get a lot of juice because he's been on he's never been on a winning team in his career at Auburn. But I don't know. Auburn just like you're right, Cole. The defense keeps them in games too. That's why the league's loaded with fronts and good defenses this year. I think. It's just the offense, man. I know people are like, do you make a change to Hank Brown? Like, no, I think it just is. I think Peyton Thorne gives them the best chance. I just think you're comparing just 2 bottom-of-the-barrel quarterbacks. I don't think they're Hank Brown away from winning that game yesterday.
God, no. They're nowhere near a Hank Brown away from winning that game. And neither is Oklahoma that way. Because if they got down, now the count, literally in the first quarter, 21-0 because of South Carolina's defense is legit. 35-9 final score. And I said some things yesterday that probably I was feeling a little bit emotional about because of I really want to believe that Shane Beamer has this team in the right direction. I really want to believe that this offense can be better than advertised. They had 278 yards. They put up 18 points. And 18 points against that Oklahoma defense, that might be good enough to win you games. The frustrating part is it comes against teams that you feel like that you should beat or that you should be able to hold your own against. Texas A&M in a couple weeks, the game that you played against LSU when you blew a 17-0 lead. That's where I get frustrated looking at this team. That's where I get frustrated looking at this South Carolina unit because their defense is one of the best in college football. And you saw that very early on. Nicky Manwari, 2 interceptions, including a pick 6. You get the big timeout fumble recovery for a touchdown. I mean, their defense set the tone so badly that Michael Hawkins Jr. lost all sense of confidence, and Oklahoma had to burn the redshirt Jackson Arnold.
Yeah, I mean, this game was – I mean, you feel bad for the ticket holders at the Oklahoma game at Memorial Stadium yesterday. I mean, the game
and a homecoming game, too.
The game was over 5 minutes in. I mean, South Carolina's defense would have outscored Oklahoma yesterday. It was over. They couldn't have came back unless South Carolina just gave them short fields, which they weren't at that point. It just knocked them right. I mean, that's what you got to do on the road in an early kickoff is go in, take the crowd out of it. Again, I wasn't there, neither were you. I don't know how in the crowd was it. I'm sure it wasn't just a rocking environment, but still, you took them out of the game. You're 21-0 right off the bat. You totally took Oklahoma out of their game plan. You controlled the whole game. I think for Oklahoma, you got to stick with Jackson Arnold at this point. Yeah, there's a lot to work on.
At this point, you have to.
Yeah, I don't know how you don't stick with him. At least he doesn't have – and again, I think two things can be true at once. I think in the moment, the Michael Hawkins start against Auburn made sense because of the offensive line issues. I think now you got to go back. You just got to take the RPO crap if you're Seth Luttrell out of it and just make decisions for Jackson Arnold. Hey, no, we're running here. Hey, no, we're passing in. There's no confusion. We got to simplify it down for our quarterback here, man. The offense is legitimately getting the team beat. It's not just like, hey, they're not moving the football and they're punting. It's like, no, you had 3 turnovers that ended up in scores. Like, you're literally getting us beat here. I don't know what to say about it. Oklahoma, granted, some things are not their fault. You had a bunch of injuries. 5 of your top 7 receivers. Offensive line's been all over the place. But at some point, you've known that for weeks. Let's just see a little improvement, and we haven't.
Would you like me to explain why I said what I said about South Carolina's offense yesterday? Because the final score was 35-9. Oklahoma still outgained South Carolina's offense 291 to 256. And that's why I get frustrated. Because again, it's just a defense that is elite as all elite can be. And you're going to bring in offensive personnel next year, but you're not going to have this front 7. You're not going to have this secondary. And this was a year that probably you wouldn't have gone to the college football playoff. But now you have to win out to get to 9-3. I'm not saying it's impossible. It truly isn't. Their schedule, it does not feel like it is a murderer's row. There's 2 games that you have to really circle.
Oklahoma?
No, South Carolina.
Oh, I thought you were saying that.
No, South Carolina. I still think 9-3.
Oh, yeah. South Carolina's that team that can win every game and they can lose a couple too. I'm with you. It's a very sleepy game for A&M in 2 weeks.
That's what I'm saying.
Sleepy. That's a game you could easily. That's a game, as you know, Cole. You've covered Texas A&M. That's a game A&M goes and loses.
It's a game A&M goes and loses. They've only lost once in Cole Up. So,
since they've been playing every common East teams, the 2 years I was at A&M would be, they lost what? 22?
22. They lost at 22. But again,
isn't that the game Carolina opened up the game with the kickoff first game or first play of the line of scrimmage? Carolina scored.
It was something weird like that. But still, again, they can win every game. They can lose every game. But again, for me, the entire point is you don't have elite defenses like this every single year. And that's the frustrating part, is that even in a game where you went up 21 skunk because of your defense, you still were outgained by Oklahoma's offense. And that's infuriating because you should be better than what was. Dave, I'm going to say one word on the game that happened out in Nashville, as the Vanderbilt Commodores are now sitting at 5-2 and a game away from bowl eligibility. PAVIA power. PAVIA power. That's it. Cool. Quarterback came out, had a game, found a way to do it, found a way to come back. It was close for a moment, then it wasn't. They win the football game. Good for them. Good for Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt was due to have some game where they didn't play great. I'm not even go back and really watch that game. I'll be honest with you here. I'm not going to judge much from that game.
Before we get on out of here, real quickly, top 5 teams in the SEC moving forward. Number 1, I think you and I both have the same answer. Georgia.
Oh yeah, best. You can make a case right now, Cole. Tell me if I'm wrong. They got 2 out of the top 3 wins in college football, I think. Texas, and then people keep forgetting about the Clemson win. I think Clemson's the best team in the ACC right now.
Clemson is the best team in the ACC. 100% they're the best team in the ACC, for my money. I think that Miami has an argument, but again, I do believe that the Clemson game looks better. The fact that you are looking at Alabama and you nearly pulled off the comeback after being down that low, I think looks better. I think that when you see what is this identity, this version of them, they're fine. And again, now you see what the running game can look like. Now, if you eliminate the explosive plays, I'm not saying every single drive has to be eliminating explosive plays, but if you can eliminate the explosive plays, you're in a really good spot. Top to bottom, overall, I feel a lot better about Georgia at this point moving forward. I feel like that they still control their destiny. You got to get 2 more wins. You're in the college football playoff. Number 2, is it Texas?
Yeah, I have Texas.
I still have Texas. It's, to me, again, there's not enough to where I believe that you showed that you aren't a good team. What you showed is that there are flaws when it comes to playing against higher level competition in the SEC. You can't have that sluggish of a performance at the very beginning. You have to have a consistent plan. You have to have a consistent identity. If you do that, you're in really good hands. You still have one of the better defenses. You still can create turnovers. You still have a team that knows how to play up to a certain level. You just got humbled a little bit on Saturday night. That was it. It was just a little bit of slice of humble pie. You'll be right back to square one. Who's number 3 for you? I think this is where the argument.
I got LSU sitting at 3 right now.
I have LSU sitting at 3 as well. Okay, so we are on the same page. I think that
next week will be massive. Again, I mean, you go out and lose a close game at Kyle Field, you aren't getting lowered that much. I mean, it's a tough environment. Wouldn't call it hostile, but a tough environment going over there. I mean, yeah, you win that game, you can only go up. You're not going to fall much just losing at A&M.
I think at this point with LSU, they're either going to start entering the conversation of going to number 2, or it's going to be like 3B, 3A next week because of A&M's got a great defense. A&M does have some weaponry. If their offense can start capitalizing and putting up points, they'll be in a really good spot. So to me, it feels like right now, I'm going to say that LSU, the way they played, the maturation of the team, defensively, the way they have looked, it's better than Tennessee. It's better than Texas A&M. Not by much, but it still is better at this point than what we've seen. Who's number 4?
4 A&M.
So you're at 4 A&M.
Yeah.
I'm Tennessee. I think that Tennessee has, if you were to tell me right now, what do I believe happens first? Tennessee's offense becomes more explosive. Nico Iamaleava starts playing a lot more clean football, and the wide receivers are going to create opportunities that they won't be dropping passes, or we're going to watch a 400-yard passing game for Connor Wigman. I lean the former.
And are we projecting this to the season's end, or how we stand in this moment?
Just how we stand right now.
Yeah, so I can't project Nico doing that because he hasn't been doing that. That's just a projection. Right now, what I know Nico is just an inconsistent quarterback right now. And that leads me, Cole, in one game right now, if I said, Cole, one game to win it all, again, I'm not even telling you an opponent, what quarterback you taking? You only get one. If you had $1 million on the line, who you taking in this league to go get you one win?
In the SEC?
Yeah.
Honestly, right now, Garrett Nussmeier feels like maybe the right answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be tough to argue against. I mean, I think you can make a case for a couple other guys, but you're right. Garrett Nussmeier being there as well just kind of shows you the inconsistencies in the quarterback. Everybody's kind of had a bad game at the quarterback position at some point this year.
I still feel like that I would get 1 or 2 great throws from Nico downfield to where I wouldn't get it from Connor, to where that's why I lean Tennessee. Both great defenses. Who's number 5 for you? I think that number 5 for me is the opposite.
Dude, call me crazy here. This one may get people fired up here. Just watching the film of this team. Again, the record's not going to show it.
No.
Get a little healthy. I'm going to go Ole Miss at 5. I think Ole Miss should have won that game last week. If it's anywhere else they win that game. I mean, you can't put Ole Miss ahead of LSU right now, just like you couldn't put Alabama ahead of Tennessee. I kind of feel the same way about that. I just think Ole Miss right now, if they played, I'm doing this on a neutral field when I'm doing this. I think the defense is improved. I think the offense can be improved, get that run game going. I don't know. I'm just not as down on Ole Miss as like some people are. Again, they're quiet. I mean, they got a big game this week against Oklahoma. They got to handle that. But the way they handled South Carolina, and again, some of that's on Shane Beamer putting his team in a hole right off the bat with the fake punt. But I don't know. I just think Ole Miss is better than Tennessee and Alabama right now. If they played on a neutral field, I would take Ole Miss. And I think this 5th spot came down to me between Ole Miss and Tennessee. I just don't trust Tennessee's offense right now. It's a championship level defense. I do. But I think at some point, offenses are so good in today's sport, you do have to score now. It's different than it was 10 years ago. You can't just win games 24-17, 17-10 against good teams consistently week to week. I don't know. I think Ole Miss right now, I think it's the 5th team. That could be wild to some. I don't know. Just when I watch it, looking at it, going with my eyeballs, I'm going to pick Ole Miss at 5 here. But I think that's a little bit more of, I think there's so much inconsistency in this league. I mean, our guy UT Bag Gump said it. Georgia's consistently a dominant team this year. They're damn good, but they aren't consistent week to week. I think you could say that about everybody, dude.
I got to see it one more week against – I got to see them against Oklahoma next week. I'll go Texas A&M. And the reason I go Texas A&M is because of I still see that defense. If you're telling me that I can hold Jackson Dart to under 290 passing yards and out of the end zone for 20 points – I can trust enough from what I've seen on the ground game from this offensive line to create opportunities for Connor to extend plays outside the pocket, to stay inside the pocket and deliver clean strikes. Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels. To me, that feels like it's a little bit more believable. And again, I don't think the offensive line play has been elite by any means down in College Station, but it has been better than what we've seen over the last 2 years combined. And at that point, it feels a lot better also than Ole Miss is at this moment. So I'm getting a great defensive front headlined by Nick Scorton. I'm getting a pretty solid secondary. I'm getting a very overall balanced offensive identity that when it is clicking, it is working. And I just feel like I don't have to rely so heavily on the explosive plays. I can milk the clock and I can trust my defense to get a stop. I go Texas A&M at 5. I got Ole Miss at 6. So basically the same. It's just a different order on how we view it. You believe A&M is better than I believe A&M is. I believe that Tennessee is better than you believe Tennessee is. But ultimately, it does feel like there is that tier list of here's Georgia, here's Texas. A little bit below is basically LSU, and then go ahead and have your conversation through 4 through 7. And you're probably not wrong if you make a good argument.
And I think anybody can beat anybody. I still think Texas, Georgia could lose to anybody outside of probably Mississippi State on a given day. I mean, it's just how open the league is. And again, I'm probably more down on the league this year. Again, I mean, we call a spade here. I know we're an SEC channel, but I'm not just going to go Candyland, rainbows, and unicorns this league. I mean, I just think the league has a lot of inconsistencies. Everybody has holes this year. Everybody can get got, which makes the product every week must-watch television because you don't have teams like Alabama and Georgia monopolizing the sport with the depth that they used to accumulate. So I think it's good for the sport, eyeballs on TV, but I do think the transfer portal, kids not really hanging around, does not allow teams to just stack depth, and you see that on Saturdays.
Week 9 is going to be classic. I have no idea what to expect. You have no idea what to expect, but what we can expect is that another Sunday Funday is on the horizon. Previews, all that action. Week 8, didn't disappoint. Like, rate, review, subscribe. Make sure that you're following us on all the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button and the ring notification. That way you don't miss a single episode of Sunday Funday, Dave Talk Ball, Monday Morning Power Hour. Every single thing that's on this channel, previews, post-game reactions, hit that ring notification. That way you keep up to date. We're on the race to 20,000 subscribers. He's Dave Shumate at Mock 10 Sports. I'm Mr. Cole Thompson. And real quickly, just remember, college football, we only get 13 weeks of this. So embrace it. And if you got them, if you smoke them if you got them, I guess. That'd be the right words. I don't know. It's been a long morning. For Dave Shumate, I'm Cole Thompson. We will be back later this week. Until next time, peace.